I'm going to copy a subject from several other people that have done videos on superfoods. Psyche Truth has a couple videos on it, I believe, and you may want to check out his. But it's a good topic, so I'm going to run a video on this too. The first thing I'd like to say about superfoods is that traditional societies didn't do a chemical analysis of their foods and determine that this or that is a superfood. They could tell by the taste, and if you can redevelop your sense of taste, then you kind of will know which foods your body needs. I don't personally care whether somebody says something's a healthy food or not. If it doesn't taste good, then your body is telling you it's not good for you. And there's a lot of stuff like that, like soy, that people will try to tell you is healthy, but you eat soy powder, it tastes terrible because it's not healthy for you. So any of these superfoods, either the ones that I go over or anything, if it doesn't taste good, it's either not fresh, it's gone rancid, or it's just not something your body needs at the time. The most important thing really is just to redevelop your sense of taste and to start eating natural foods instead of stuff that's full of artificial flavors and has been so heavily processed that you can't tell what the natural taste was to begin with. And I'm not trying to claim this is any kind of a comprehensive list or that I'm any expert on this. These are just foods that I notice people in traditional societies or even in the health movement going to a lot of trouble to obtain, not because of the caloric content, but because of the high nutrient content, which they can taste in the food. The first one I'll list is kale. Compared to pretty much any other vegetable, has a really high mineral and vitamin content. It's just amazing that people bred this plant for hundreds of years. It's supposedly one of the earliest, or stems from the earliest cultivated plants. And they bred this plant to have high vitamins and minerals because they could taste which strains had the highest nutritional value. So that's the first one I'll list. Sea vegetables is another one, extremely high in minerals. Kind of hard to find in a lot of areas if you're near an Asian grocery store. Really good prices on sea vegetables. Next one I'll list is mushrooms. Again, hardly any calories. People eat it because of the high nutritional value. Fairly high in B vitamins for a non-animal food, and also fairly high in minerals. Another thing that people don't consider about mushrooms, and it's not really studied, but any fungus tends to have antibacterial properties. Next, let me jump to a couple that aren't traditional foods, but they are very popular in the health food community, and they've stood the relative test of time in the health food community. First one of these would be wheat germ, really high in vitamin E, high in omega-3s, high in some B vitamins. Yeah, most of the nutrients in wheat are in the germ, and unfortunately we take that out and then bleach the rest of the flour, and you're left with a dead food that's not particularly healthy, white flour. So wheat germ, really healthy food. A lot of times different flavorings are added to it. I would just recommend that you try to eat it fresh so that you can taste whether or not it's gone rancid and whether or not it actually tastes good, or you're just tasting the flavorings in it. Another health food that's popular is bee pollen. I personally never like the taste, so don't eat it a lot, but a lot of people in the health food community kind of swear by this, apparently high in zinc. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and list raw honey as a traditional superfood, although nearly all modern nutritionists would disagree. However, native societies often considered it one of the healthiest foods you can eat. Ayurvedic medicine, for example, goes into a lot of detail about the benefits of raw honey. And we know today that it's higher in antioxidants and enzymes than practically any other food collectively. So traditionally it was always considered a very healthy food. It also has antibacterial and antifungal properties. One thing I'd like to stress, though, is that native societies do go to a lot of trouble to extract the honey unheated from the honeycomb. The quick way to do it, which we do here in the United States, is to heat the honey and filter it that way, which destroys all the enzymes. Best thing to do is just contact the manufacturer and make sure that it is truly raw honey, since legally the term raw food in the United States doesn't really mean anything. So I'm going to throw in something that's not a food, but it's a traditional practice that's very common around the world, and we've completely forgotten it in modern society, and that is to soak grains or beans or even nuts before they're prepared. Doing this starts the sprouting process, gets rid of a lot of enzyme inhibitors, anti-nutrients like phytate, and it also greatly increases the B vitamin content. and it decreases the cooking time so that you don't destroy as many nutrients and damage the food structure when you cook the food. So in native societies, they'll take brown rice or lentils or whatever, soak them overnight, and then prepare them the next day. They don't have to cook them as long. It's a lot healthier food. I don't know why we've completely forgotten this practice in modern society. Lastly, I'd like to cover a couple of the most nutrient-dense foods, and not surprisingly, traditionally people went to the most trouble to obtain these foods, and they cost the most money. One is cod liver oil, which is pretty closely related to fish roe and caviar. There was a whole economy based around cod liver oil in the Middle Ages, and caviar has always been one of the most expensive foods. Really high in DHA and EPA, and likely high in other nutrients that haven't fully been investigated yet. And lastly is a kind of controversial one, that's bivalve shellfish like oysters, clams, mussels. In southern traditional societies, there's often a complete prohibition on eating these foods because in warmer waters they tend to accumulate a neurotoxin, a natural neurotoxin from marine plankton, whereas in northern colder waters they don't accumulate much of that toxin, and it's one of the most sought after foods. People would go to great lengths to obtain raw oysters at various times in history. And when you think about two of the foods that are the most expensive for the longest periods of time, it's caviar and raw oysters, because they're two of the most nutrient dense foods. Shellfish like clams and oysters, really high in B vitamins, extremely high in B12, also very high in zinc. One of the most nutrient dense foods, but of course important to get them from a safe location. So that's it, and I'm sure I'm missing lots of examples, and you're welcome to write them in the comments section. In my opinion, a superfood is just anything that native societies ate to boost their nutrition rather than to boost their caloric intake. And nowadays, unfortunately, we've all been convinced to eat vitamins that are produced in some chemical factory. It's been shown in studies that these artificially produced vitamins aren't as effective as natural sources of vitamins. So, in my opinion, it's always good to investigate various foods that native societies ate to increase their nutrition.